Welcome to TheGaGG.com's Glock-ology 200 series. Today we're going to be doing slide, disassembly, and assembly. As you'll notice, I've already taken my slide off of the gun because the only thing we're going to be working with today, folks, is this slide. And everything's going to come out of this and we'll disassemble it down to the parts except the rear and the front sight. Now, before we get started, I got three things I got to make sure we're aware of, and as reminders to you. One, we've got a bit of a new studio layout. You'll see some things over here to the right, and you'll also see me moving things up here to the right. That's because I've got a close-up camera here that I want to make sure I get good close-up shots. Like when I hold this up here like this and do it around, you'll have to forgive me moving away and not looking at you. Secondly, I want to remind you to go out and review our firearm safety videos. We handle a lot of guns. You probably handle a lot of guns. Periodically, we want to remind you to review those firearm safety videos just so that you remind yourself of those important things that prevent us from having tragic accidents working with guns and shooting. And then third is a legal disclaimer. The Glock-ology 200 and above series, we're doing some gunsmithing task with our guns. And if you're not willing to sacrifice your gun, in other words, get it in a state where it may not function properly, or that you have to take it to a gunsmith, or go to a range after you do something that may have been an iffy change to it, and safely test that gun with live ammunition, and do that at your own risk, then you know what? Just cut this video off right now. This video is not for you. However, if you do feel comfortable doing those things and you are willing to sacrifice a gun, then this video is for you. It's a good instructional guide and should help you learn how to work with your Glock in a more intermediate fashion. So let's get started. All right. The first thing that you have to do in disassembling this slide is take the slide cover plate off here. All right. And the way you're going to do that is no amount of force, putting it in your teeth, that sort of stuff's going to get it off. There's actually a little trick and tip here, so listen to it. And that is inside here, and I'm going to hold this up to the camera, inside this channel, where the striker, this is the end of the striker is, you'll see the striker continue down. It's the chrome piece, and then you'll see some black plastic. Those are your spring cups, all right? And you want to put your Glock tool right above those spring cups, and then you're going to put pressure on those spring cups and push them down. And then guess what, folks? As you see here, that allows you to push the slide plate off. Now notice, I pushed the slide plate off with my thumb coming from the top of the slide, or where the sights are, because that allows my thumb to slide over and cover. If you heard that click and went click, that was your striker pin assembly and potentially your extractor plunger popping up because they're under pressure. And as we said, these things under pressure can potentially pop out on you. So be careful of that. All right. Now, next thing you're going to do is just grab this extension piece right here. Push your extractor assembly all the way out. This is your extractor assembly. And that extractor assembly, basically, we will take apart here in a minute. It's the last thing. This is going to be the thing where parts go pew at times. Quick side note. Because of that risk of the parts going choo, whether it's when you took the slide plate cover off or later when we take this off, work in an area that, you don't have shag carpet or something like that. And, you may, if you have to take the striker part, just go ahead and pre-order some of those spring cups because, trust me, I've learned the hard way. Once you lose one, it's hard to find it. So keep a few of those around. Now, next thing you're going to do is just pull your extractor plunger out, and that's the piece that's right there, the white top, okay? You just pull that out. It should come out freely. If it doesn't, there's probably something wrong. We'll set that off to the side. And now you've got two major pieces, but three pieces all together because it's actually three components. That is that you have your striker safety plunger, which is right here, and you have your extractor, which is right here, and both of those need to come out. Now, to get the extractor out, all you have to do is push down fully on that striker safety plunger. I just push down on that, just like that, okay? And as you saw, this piece just pops out, and that's your extractor. Now, it's important to note on this extractor, if you'll look at it from kind of this perspective, there's an end that has almost a circular piece to it and an end that's a flat piece. And the circular piece is the piece that goes toward the rear sight when you put it back in. And what should have happened is what you see here, and that is that safety plunger popped up. If it didn't, then you may have to kind of bounce your thing a little bit or turn it upside down. And here's the other two pieces. So you have the safety plunger and you have the safety plunger spring there, okay? And that safety plunger spring, you can take it out. It's not necessary. You just twist in and twist out, okay? We're not going to do that today. So we're down to taking apart this striker assembly. This is the fun part, folks, and if you've got big fingers like me, I've got big, piggy fingers here, then this is a difficult task oftentimes, so listen very closely to some of the techniques that I give you. Now, the first thing that you want to do is you want to slide in reverse, like this, the striker assembly back into the top of this, or the back of the slide. It helps you hold this while you're removing the spring. You're pulling the spring down, you're removing the spring cups. And then what you're going to do is basically you're going to put some pressure on this spring. Okay. Oops. You're going to put some pressure on this spring. You're going to pull it down, and notice one of those spring cups just fell out. The other one you may have to pull out, and I'll do those in a minute. And then you want to release the tension on that spring and take it out. Then you can take the striker out, and then you can just slide the striker out of the channel adapter. So here's the black plastic channel adapter right there. Okay. Here's the striker, or firing pin, as people often call it. Okay. Then you have your firing pin spring. And then you have these two little things right here, and they're virtually impossible to do a close-up. So I'm going to hold them up to the camera right here for you to see. Okay? Look at that. All right, see how small they are? These are the ones that go flying off across the room and you never find them. Well, guess what, folks? Slide is disassembled except for the front and rear sight. You've got nothing in there. Show it to you. So what do we want to do now? I think we want to assemble it, don't we? Well, let's start with assembling this striker assembly piece back together. So you slide the striker into the channel adapter like that and just let it slide down over there. Okay. Now we need to put this spring back on, and let me show you a little tip that will help out. So when you set that back in there, you turn that off to the side so that it pushes that striker all the way up. This is going to give you more room to work with as you do it. And then what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to push your firing pin spring over there. You're going to want to pull it all the way down, and then these cups, which are really hard to work with, just slide down into that spring. Yep, there it is right there. Okay. On either side. And if you're like me, you have to do this a few times. There you go. Now notice what I've done. Before releasing those cups, I've slid them back around there, and there are two of them. And they just go on opposite sides of the spring and slide down in that little, inside the the spring up against the actual striker assembly. And before I hold them in place like this and kind of give them an up and down to make sure that they're kind of adjusted. And then before I take my fingers off that, I'm going to put my hand over this, folks. And that way, if those striker spring cups go flying off, they hit my hand, they go right back down on the table. All right, now let me show you up real close. Okay, this is the spring cups right here. And notice how they sit on either side. They also sit right up underneath the edge of the base of this firing pin part of the striker. All right. And you got to make sure that they get up underneath there. You got to make sure that they fit. And I normally give that a couple of kind of jiggles. Then I'm going to reassemble this by starting with, so now that we've gotten the striker assembly back together, we basically reverse the order that we started before. So we're going to work with the safety plunger and the extractor. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and drop that safety plunger and spring down in there. And then I'm going to take my Glock tool and I'm just going to push it all the way down. And remember, the round end goes to the back toward the rear slide. And I just slide that in there and then release pressure and capture that, okay? And I just want it kind of flush like that. The reason being is there's no pressure from that extractor plunger, and if you go jiggling that around or doing things, that's going to fall back out. So then the next thing we're going to do is put that extractor plunger in there. Okay, go ahead and push it down in there. And notice we can actually see in that channel behind the extractor the channel plunger where it comes down in. And then we're going to take the striker assembly that we put back together. And we're going to put that back down in there. Right? Good. Now, last thing that we have to do is put this slide plate cover on there. Now, a little tip and trick that I have is I normally get the channel that slides in kind of set up like that, and I hold my finger on it. Then I'm going to take my Glock tool, which is not the best thing in the world, and I push that down while I slide the plate over it until it holds it in place for me. And then I can take my Glock tool and push on the extractor depressor plunger and push that the rest of the way up. And now that slide plate cover has an oval end and then it has a cutout into it. Just remember, yeah, I have occasionally not looking slid it in the reverse order and it doesn't fit and it doesn't work, but it can capture those things and then you got to kind of jiggle it around to get out. Now, I generally grab my striker and pull it up and down, make sure it's got some play in it. I kind of test my plunger to make sure it's got some play in it. If either of those don't move freely and spring properly, then you've got something wrong with your slide, okay, and reassembling it. Now, last thing we always do when we do this intermediate work is always function check a gun. Because the thing that we don't want to happen is that we do some intermediate work like this, forget to function check it, go to the range, and guess what? We have a gun that will malfunction, or a gun that doesn't function, or a gun that just is broken. All right, so let's reassemble that gun. Notice I rack the slide completely back, pull the trigger, boom. Now notice, kept my finger on the trigger there. I'm going to rack the slide to the back again. Release, you should hear a small click. Then pull it back, big click. Congratulations, folks. You have taken your slide apart and put it back together. That's everything in that slide. So you're good to go with doing anything that you want to do in those parts with the slide now. Because if you can break it down to those parts, you're good to go. All right, I'm Luke Stevens. This is TheGaGG.com. And this is Glock-ology 200 slide disassembly and assembly. Woohoo! We did it! Yes!